Tired of struggling to break bad habits? Wondering why that nightly doom scroll or third snack suddenly seems like a default setting? You're not alone, and guess what? There's a reason your brain keeps playing the same loop. In this journey, we'll explore how mindfulness offers a surprisingly gentle way to break free from patterns that no longer serve you. Ancient wisdom meets modern solutions. Mindfulness practices, yes, those quiet breathing moments and awareness check-ins you've heard about, are grounded in centuries-old traditions, but now they're backed by some pretty serious science. This isn't about sitting on a cushion for hours, unless you want to. This is about learning to meet your mind in the middle of the mess. Picture this: you reach for your phone for the 10th time in 5 minutes. You know you're doing it, but your hand moves anyway. The light hits your eyes, your thumb scrolls instinctively, and boom, you're locked in again. Meanwhile, part of your brain mutters, "Why am I like this?" You probably won't know this unless you've looked into it, but your brain is actually trying to help you by repeating what it thinks works, even if it totally doesn't. Before you settle in, feel free to like the video if it brought you a little peace, and if you'd like to join us again, we'd love to have you back. Subscribe when you're ready. No pressure, just rest. Share something if you feel like it. Let's slowly drift into tonight's quiet moments together. You're about to learn how habits hijack your brain, and why mindfulness might just be the unexpected key to change. So here's where it begins, with your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. Habit formation, at its core, is your brain being efficient. It's trying to conserve energy, reduce decision-making stress, and streamline your daily existence. You brush your teeth without thinking. You check the same 3 apps every morning. You grab a snack during commercial breaks. These loops are part of your basal ganglia's automatic processes, a brain structure known for storing patterns, routines, and behaviors. It's a bit like muscle memory, but for your whole life. A mainstream psychological study from MIT showed that habit loops form through a cue-routine reward cycle. First, there's a cue, a time, place, feeling, or event that triggers the routine. Then the routine itself, grabbing a soda, biting your nails, zoning out. Finally, the reward, maybe dopamine, maybe relief, maybe just familiarity. This loop gets reinforced the more it repeats. Your brain, ever the loyal efficiency expert, thinks, "Ah yes, this again, easy, no thinking required." Now, here's something interesting. Your brain doesn't actually care whether the habit is good or bad. It just cares that it's predictable. That's why even habits you hate can feel oddly comforting. You've done them so many times, your brain interprets them as safe. Safe doesn't mean healthy, it just means familiar. Like that one college friend who always showed up with bad ideas and takeout. The issue has sparked significant intellectual debate in neuroscience circles. Is willpower enough to change a habit, or does it require an entirely new loop? Many researchers argue that you can't just delete a habit, you have to replace it. You need to notice the cue, interrupt the routine, and offer your brain a more constructive reward. But we'll come back to that later. For now, let's just pause and acknowledge something. You're not failing when you repeat a bad habit. You're running a well-rehearsed neurological play. That's all. The trick is to become aware of the play before it starts. Enter mindfulness. But not so fast, we're still deep in the jungle of why these habits are so sticky. A cheeky but useful tidbit: rats, when taught to run a maze for chocolate, would literally fall into a groove where their brains stopped firing in the middle of the task. They'd operate on pure autopilot. The exact same thing happens when you open TikTok for just a minute and find yourself 2 hours later on a video of someone restoring antique chairs. And here's the kicker: you're not lazy, weak, or broken. You're just neurologically efficient. There remains considerable disagreement about how much control we actually have over our habits. Some psychologists emphasize free will and conscious choice. Others argue that 90% of our behavior is habitual and unconscious. The truth? Likely somewhere in the foggy middle. Now imagine you're standing in your kitchen late at night. You're not hungry, but you're restless. You know where the snacks are. You know what will happen if you open that cupboard. But your body starts moving toward it anyway. That's the loop kicking in. That's the automation. So how do you stop something that happens before you even notice it? This is where mindfulness enters, not with trumpets or dramatic interventions, but with a soft flashlight. It helps you spot that exact moment, the twitch, the craving, the whisper of, just one more, and instead of reacting, you observe. And observation, without judgment, creates space. And space? Space is power. You might find this surprising, but studies show even a 10-second pause between cue and routine is enough to start weakening the loop. That pause, that tiny sliver of awareness, is what we're going to explore over the next 13 sections. One quirky little gem before we wrap up this part: in ancient Buddhist teachings, monks were taught to notice every step while walking as a mindfulness exercise. Some would walk so slowly, they appeared to move in slow motion. Why? Because when you slow down, you stop reacting. You respond instead. And that shift in energy leads us into something else. What exactly pulls you back into the habit loop in the first place? The cues. The cravings. The triggers that whisper from behind the curtain. You're about to see just how sneaky those can be. So now that you've peeked behind the curtain and seen how habit loops get hardwired into your brain, let's wander into their true puppeteer: cues and cravings. These are the sneaky signals that quietly invite you to repeat the same old routine, over and over, sometimes without you even realizing it. It's not about weakness. It's about wiring. And the cues? Oh, they're clever little things. Let's say your phone buzzes. A notification lights up. You feel a little jolt, barely noticeable, but it's there. That's a cue. It nudges your attention. You reach for your phone without even thinking. Suddenly, you're 10 scrolls deep in someone else's vacation photos, vaguely wondering where the last 40 minutes went. That micro moment of buzz plus reach equals cue to routine. The craving doesn't scream. It whispers. Just check real quick. Mainstream psychology tells us that habits are cue-dependent, not just behavior-based. B.J. Fogg's work on habit formation at Stanford highlights this. People are most likely to repeat a behavior not because of motivation, but because of context. Triggers, environments, emotional states, these become the stage managers of your habits. You think you're in control, but honestly, the lighting, music, and costume changes are all pre-scripted. Here's something interesting. Studies show your brain lights up in anticipation of a reward before you even get it. This is called reward prediction, and it's a big part of craving. That craving? It's your brain's over-enthusiastic intern, trying to get a dopamine raise by guessing what'll feel good. It floods you with desire before the thing even happens. That cookie? That message? That impulse buy? Craving shows up at the front door like, hey, I think we're gonna love this. Whether or not it's true doesn't matter. The circuitry is already activated. You might find this surprising. Casinos and social media platforms actually study cue response patterns to design more addictive environments. Everything from sound effects to refresh mechanics is tailored to hook your attention, ignite craving, and leave you chasing one more hit of novelty. Every ding, red dot, and animation is a nudge toward behavior repetition. Kind of makes you want to uninstall a few apps, huh? And it's not just external cues. Internal states can be powerful triggers too. Feel anxious? You might bite your nails. Bored? You reach for snacks. Tired? The couch calls. These emotional cues don't come with flashing lights, they just slide in under your mood and redirect your actions. A long-standing controversy surrounds whether cravings are purely learned or biologically hardwired. Some researchers argue cravings are conditioned, learned responses from years of reinforcement. Others suggest that certain cravings, like sugar or novelty, are evolutionarily embedded in us for survival. Either way, cravings are real. They pull. And you respond. So what can you do about it? Mindfulness invites you to slow that cue-craving routine cycle just enough to see it happening. Just enough to ask, wait, what's actually going on here? Imagine being able to notice the cue, the buzz, the emotion, the itch, before the automatic reaction. That pause we talked about? It starts to open here. And it's subtle. Mindfulness doesn't barge in like a coach yelling from the sidelines. It arrives more like a quiet friend gently touching your elbow. Hey, it whispers, you don't have to do that. You could just breathe for a second. Let's try to visualize this. You're in your car. You hit traffic. Immediately, you reach for your phone. You know you're not supposed to. You know it won't help. But the cue is strong: boredom, frustration, stillness. The craving kicks in. Distraction. Stimulation. Anything but sitting here. But what if, instead, you noticed that urge? Just noticed. Oh wow, I really want to escape this moment. You don't fight it. You don't shame yourself. You just name it. There's actual neuroscience behind that naming. It's called affect labeling, a fancy way of saying, name the feeling to tame the feeling. Research from UCLA showed that labeling emotions reduces activity in the amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for emotional reactivity. In other words, simply noticing the craving and saying, "This is just boredom," can weaken its grip. Here's a quirky fact you might enjoy. In the 1600s, physicians believed cravings came from imbalances of bodily humors, so if you craved too much wine or cheese, they try to balance your bile and phlegm. Thankfully, we've moved past that, though let's be honest, a lot of us are still dealing with cravings using questionable logic. I've had a rough day, so yes, I deserve 5 cupcakes and a blanket fort. But rather than fighting cravings with willpower, mindfulness teaches you to sit with them. Like you would a guest who overstays their welcome. You don't throw them out. You just don't offer tea. This practice of noticing cues and cravings is the bedrock of habit change. It's not about crushing the craving. It's about observing it long enough for it to change on its own. Cravings are weather, they pass. Mindfulness helps you wait out the storm instead of dancing in the rain every time. There's also something deeply empowering in discovering just how many cues influence your habits. The more you become aware of them, the more you realize you can gently rewrite the script. You might start changing your environment, adding friction to bad habits and making good habits easier. Pro tip: put your phone in another room when you work. Or hide the cookies. Or both. Let's pause with this image, you, in the middle of your day, hearing the old familiar cue. The whisper of the craving floats in, and instead of obeying, you breathe. Just once. You say, "There you are again." And maybe, this time, you do something different. Maybe not perfectly, but differently. And that brings us to something you might have heard before, but probably never fully unpacked: mindfulness itself. What is it really? How do you actually do it? And why does it work so well on something as stubborn as a habit? As your mind drifts deeper, another layer opens. Let's get real for a second. Mindfulness might sound like something only yoga instructors or monks with long robes talk about. But here's the twist: you've already done it, probably without realizing. Ever zoned in completely while chopping vegetables, watching the sun set, or listening to your favorite song with goosebumps? That's mindfulness. You were just present. No filters. No multitasking. No judgment. So, what exactly is mindfulness? At its core, mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to your present moment experience with openness and curiosity. Not trying to change it. Not labeling it good or bad. Just being with it, as it is. It's deceptively simple, and radically difficult. Especially in a world that's constantly screaming, "Scroll faster. Buy now. Be better already." And yet, mindfulness has been proven to lower stress, improve focus, reduce emotional reactivity, and, yes, help disrupt those automatic bad habits that trip you up. A landmark psychological study from Harvard showed that people spend almost 47% of their waking hours lost in thought, most of it focused on things other than what they're doing in the moment. The kicker? The more their minds wandered, the less happy they felt. So basically, mindfulness might not just help you break habits, it might make you feel better, too. Fancy that. Here's something interesting: mindfulness isn't about thinking less. It's about becoming aware of your thoughts without getting yanked around by them. That's the difference. You can't stop your thoughts from arising, any more than you can stop waves from hitting the shore. But you can learn to surf them. Gently. With style. You might find this surprising. In traditional Buddhist texts, mindfulness, or sati, is one of the key factors on the path to liberation. It was never meant to be about stress balls and scented candles. It was about waking up to the truth of your own experience. That email craving? That fidgety restlessness? That mindless reach for junk food? They're all invitations to wake up just a little. There remains considerable disagreement about how to define mindfulness across different cultures and psychological models. Some schools emphasize bare attention, pure observation, while others weave in compassion and intention. The West has largely adopted the present moment awareness definition, but debates continue about whether that simplifies or waters down its deeper roots. Either way, you don't need a full monastery membership to start practicing. So let's make it practical. Imagine you're sitting at your desk. Your mind is racing, your foot is tapping, and you're halfway through a bag of chips you didn't even want. You pause. You take a breath. And you notice. You feel the texture of the chair under your legs. The cool air hitting your skin. The salty film on your tongue. You acknowledge the tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your jaw. You're not trying to fix any of it, you're just noticing. That, right there, is mindfulness. And the magic lies in how invisible it is. No one sees you doing it. There's no gold star. But over time, this quiet noticing chips away at the automaticity of bad habits. It turns mindlessness into awareness. And once you're aware, you have a choice. A quirky tidbit for you: in 2014, a mindfulness program was introduced in British Parliament, called Mindfulness All-Party Parliamentary Group. Yes, British politicians were taught how to sit with their breath and be present in the chamber. Imagine a bunch of MPs calmly breathing while thinking about tea and taxes. Proof that mindfulness has truly gone global. But here's the best part: mindfulness isn't something you have to get good at. You don't win at it. You don't level up like a video game. It's more like brushing your teeth. You don't do it because it's thrilling. You do it because it's hygiene, mental hygiene. You clear the mental plaque so you can think clearly, act consciously, and maybe, just maybe, resist that 10th cookie. Let's break it down even further. Most people confuse mindfulness with meditation. They're related, but not the same. Meditation is one structured way to practice mindfulness, like going to the gym is one way to strengthen your muscles. But mindfulness can be practiced anytime, while walking, eating, cleaning, even arguing, though that last one's advanced level stuff. The invitation is to notice what's happening as it's happening, without slapping on a label or a plan. This is boredom. This is tension. This is the urge to open Twitter again even though I closed it 5 minutes ago. You name it. You breathe with it. You let it float. And suddenly, you're not trapped in the loop. You're watching the loop. That tiny shift is everything. It doesn't mean the urge goes away. It means you're no longer confusing the urge with truth. You realize, this craving isn't me, it's just a cloud passing through. Want an example from daily life? Picture yourself watching TV. A commercial for pizza comes on. Suddenly, you need pizza. Like, urgently. Your brain lights up like a Christmas tree. But you pause. You breathe. You recognize, this is a cue. This is my brain remembering cheese and pleasure. You sit with it for 30 seconds. The craving eases. Not gone. Just, not steering the wheel anymore. You didn't wrestle the craving. You noticed it. And noticing, dear friend, is the first domino. Mindfulness has even been incorporated into clinical therapy. Mindfulness-based relapse prevention is a treatment for people recovering from substance use disorders. It helps individuals become aware of high-risk situations and internal cues before they lead to relapse. A powerful reminder that this isn't just theoretical, it's life-saving work, too. And while the science is compelling, the experience is simple. It starts with this: pause. Look around. Feel your body. Observe your mind. Let it all be. No fixing. Just seeing. So now that you know what mindfulness is, what's the first move? You've guessed it, noticing without judging. The foundational practice that starts pulling you out of the habit spiral and gently puts your hands back on the wheel. And that's where we'll go next. Time to discover your first mindfulness superpower. So here we are, you've made it past the introduction, through the maze of cravings and brain loops, and now we're arriving at your first actual mindfulness superpower: noticing without judging. It sounds small, soft, maybe even too gentle to make a difference. But don't underestimate this one. It's the equivalent of pulling the emergency brake on a runaway train. Let's say it like this: most of your bad habits thrive on one simple thing: unconscious reactivity. You feel a nudge, and you react. You get bored, and you scroll. You get stressed, and you snack. The action is so automatic that it slips past your awareness like a thief in fuzzy slippers. You don't even realize it happened until it's already over. But here's the twist: the very moment you notice what you're doing, like, really notice, you create a gap. A moment. And that moment? It's where the habit loses its power. It's like flipping on a light and catching the burglar halfway through your pantry. The problem is, when most people finally do notice what they're doing, they immediately follow it with, "Ugh, what's wrong with me?" or "Why do I keep doing this?" That inner critic pops up like it's been rehearsing backstage. And this is where the second half of the superpower comes in: no judgment. Noticing is powerful. Noticing without judging? That's where the real transformation begins. A mainstream study published in the Journal of Behavioral Medicine found that people who practiced mindfulness with self-compassion were more likely to stick with healthy habits, and less likely to relapse into unhealthy ones. The key wasn't just awareness. It was non-judgmental awareness. Because when you stop beating yourself up, your brain no longer associates habit change with shame. So, what does it look like to notice without judging? Let's imagine a scenario. You're standing in front of the fridge. The clock says 10:42 p.m. You're not hungry. But your hand on the handle. Instead of reaching for the leftovers, you pause. You ask yourself, gently, what's happening right now? You don't scold. You don't spiral. You witness. Maybe you're feeling restless. Or lonely. Or just a little numb after a long day. Whatever it is, you just sit with it. You name it. You breathe. And maybe, just maybe, you close the fridge. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you eat the thing. But this time, you do it consciously. And that alone begins to break the spell. Here's an interesting one. Mindfulness teacher and psychiatrist Dr. Judson Brewer describes bad habits as closed feedback loops, fueled by trigger behavior reward circuits. But when people notice their behavior while it's happening, it starts to feel less satisfying. One of his favorite phrases is, "Get curious." Because curiosity and judgment can't really coexist. If you're truly curious about your urge, you won't shame yourself for having it. You'll just observe it like a scientist with a clipboard. You might find this surprising. In Buddhist meditation, one core instruction is to observe thoughts and sensations like clouds passing through the sky. No grabbing. No pushing. Just watching. Some monks even visualize each judgmental thought as a visitor knocking at the door. They open the door, nod politely, and let the thought walk right through, without offering tea. There remains considerable disagreement about whether judgment is ever helpful in habit change. Some psychologists argue that guilt can motivate behavioral correction, while others warn it creates more emotional resistance and relapse. But the mindfulness perspective leans toward kindness. Not softness. Kindness. Because if you can meet your habits with curiosity instead of criticism, you take away their favorite fuel, shame. And speaking of shame, here's a cheeky little truth. Shame is a master of disguise. It doesn't show up in a trench coat and announce itself. It whispers. You should have known better. You always screw this up. Everyone else has it figured out. And before you know it, you're not just dealing with a bad habit, you're dealing with a full-on identity crisis. But if you practice noticing without judgment, the shame doesn't stick. You see the thought. You label it. Here's the "I'm a failure" voice again. You breathe. And you let it float past. Let's bring this to life. Picture yourself doom scrolling. Again. You catch it mid-scroll. That's a win. You pause. You say, wow, I'm really avoiding something right now. No guilt. Just awareness. You feel your breath. You come back to the room. The spell weakens. In Japanese Zen practice, beginners are taught to bow to their distractions. Imagine that, scrolling Instagram and then giving a little mental bow to your craving. Thank you, distraction, for showing me I'm human. It's weird. It's wonderful. And somehow, it works. But let's not pretend this is easy. Your brain has been trained to judge. To fix. To label. So when you start noticing your behavior with neutrality, it might feel like you're doing nothing. But that nothing? That's the start of everything. One way to practice this is through what's called a RAIN practice: recognize, allow, investigate, nurture. You recognize the habit urge. You allow it to be there. You investigate what it feels like in the body or what emotions behind it. And then, you nurture yourself. With kindness. With presence. Maybe even with a little laugh at how predictable you are. The trick is to do it often. Not perfectly. Often. You won't get it right every time. That's okay. Mindfulness isn't about perfection. It's about starting again, over and over, with less drama each time. So the next time you catch yourself in a loop, about to light a cigarette, click an app, or say something sharp, see if you can pause. Notice. Name. Breathe. No lecture. No shame. Just presence. And over time, you'll begin to notice something amazing. The habit loses its edge. The urgency softens. And you start making different choices, not because you forced yourself to, but because you woke up in the middle of the loop. That shift in awareness leads us somewhere deeper, into your brain's remarkable ability to rewire itself through awareness. Yes, that's right. Your old dog brain can learn new tricks. So, here you are, quietly observing your impulses, naming your patterns, and starting to loosen the grip of judgment. But now something even cooler is happening behind the scenes. With each act of awareness, with every time you notice a craving and don't automatically react, your brain is literally, yes, literally, rewiring itself. Welcome to the world of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the brain's built-in ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections over time. That's a fancy way of saying, your habits aren't hardwired, they're just well-traveled paths. And every time you choose a new response, every time you notice instead of react, you're walking a slightly different trail. Keep doing that, and the old trail starts to fade. Like a path in the woods that stops being used. Weeds take over. Trees reclaim it. Meanwhile, a fresh little trail is forming under your feet. Mainstream research from the University of Wisconsin-Madison showed that regular mindfulness practice increases gray matter density in areas related to self-regulation and cognitive flexibility, specifically, the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that acts like a thoughtful adult in a room full of toddlers, or cravings. And when it's strong, it helps you pause, consider, and choose a different action. Even better? The amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear, stress, and impulsive reactions, actually shrinks in long-term meditators. Think about that. The fire alarm in your head gets quieter. And the calm, wise part gets louder. Your brain doesn't care if your habit is smoking, stress eating, or obsessively organizing your inbox. The neural mechanics are the same. Cue, craving, reward. But when you become aware of the loop, you create a new neural fork in the road. Do you go left, into the old behavior? Or right, into a pause? You might find this surprising. Taxi drivers in London, who must memorize an absurdly complex map of city streets, actually have a larger hippocampus, the memory center of the brain, than average. Their brains change shape in response to how they use them. And if their brains can grow from memorizing routes, yours can absolutely reshape from noticing your snack cravings with kindness. But here's the reality check. Your brain wants to return to old patterns. Not because it hates you, but because it loves efficiency. That morning coffee and phone combo you've done 900 times? Your brain has that choreographed like a Broadway number. Mindfulness? That's a new script. The first few times, it feels clunky. You might forget your lines. That's okay. Keep showing up. A long-standing controversy surrounds how much deliberate mental effort is required to rewire habits. Some experts argue that consistent repetition is the key. Just do the new thing until it sticks. Others insist that insight, the moment of mindful awareness, is what really transforms behavior. The truth may be that both matter. Mindfulness gives you the awareness, and practice gives you the muscle memory. Let's walk through it. Imagine you always snack when you're stressed. It's your comfort move. But now you start catching yourself. Noticing the tension in your shoulders. The clench in your jaw. The way your hand reaches for the cupboard before your brain even catches up. And instead of grabbing the snack, you sit down. You breathe. You say, stress is here. You don't try to solve it. You feel it. That's a new loop. It might not feel satisfying yet. It might not work every time. But you just laid down a fresh strand of connection in your neural web. And with repetition, those strands thicken. Like ropes. Like bridges. New behavior gets easier. Old habits lose their grip. Here's a quirky fact for your back pocket. In some meditation traditions, practitioners are taught to smile at their difficult thoughts. Not because they like them, but to remind themselves that suffering doesn't have to own them. The smile is symbolic. A way of saying, I see you. And I'm still okay. Want to try this? Next time you notice a bad habit trying to run the show, try smiling. Just a tiny one. Even if you feel ridiculous. Especially if you feel ridiculous. That moment of amusement sends a new signal to your brain. This is different. I am not trapped. I am awake. Over time, you'll start to sense the changes. That long pause between urge and reaction gets a little easier. The pull of the habit isn't as magnetic. It's still there, but it's not driving anymore. You're in the front seat again. Let's say you have a habit of checking your phone in bed, every night. You've tried to stop. You've even made a rule. No screens after 10. But by 10:07, you're squinting at memes again. Classic. But now, instead of scolding yourself, you start a new plan. Each night, you set the phone down, and sit with the urge. You breathe. You observe. You feel the itch. Maybe even write a few lines in a journal. That tiny shift. That's the prefrontal cortex saying, hey, maybe let's not let TikTok lull us to sleep again. And the more you repeat this, the more the craving quiets. The neural pathways get rearranged. And what once felt impossible becomes ordinary. Here's something else. You can even pre-wire your brain with intention. Neuropsychologist Rick Hanson calls it taking in the good. When something positive happens, like resisting a habit, or feeling proud, pause and really feel it. Let it sink in for 10 to 20 seconds. That helps your brain encode the experience into long-term memory. A micro-upgrade, every time. So now you know, your brain isn't a static slab of jelly. It's a living, changing, rewiring marvel. And every mindful moment is like a little vote for the person you're becoming. And that leads us into something beautifully portable, something you carry with you, always, whether you're in line at the store or stuck in traffic. The breath. Your pocket-sized habit breaker. Let's take a breath together. Seriously. Inhale slowly, hold for just a beat, now exhale, as if you're letting the moment itself melt off your shoulders. There. You just did it. You practiced mindfulness. No app. No altar. No subscription required. And guess what? That simple breath? That's not just a relaxing party trick. It's one of the most powerful tools in your anti-habit arsenal. Because when it comes to rewiring your response in those make-or-break moments, the breath is always available, and it's deceptively brilliant. Why? Because it brings you back. Back to the body. Back to the moment. Back to yourself. Here's the deal, your breath is like a reset button that lives inside your chest. It's always happening, but the moment you shift your attention to it, something changes. Your mind softens. Your racing thoughts slow down just a touch. You reconnect to what's real instead of what's automatic. And when it comes to breaking bad habits, that moment of reconnection is everything. Let's break it down a bit further. Mainstream psychological research, especially from fields like biofeedback and cognitive therapy, has shown that conscious breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest mode. It counterbalances the fight or flight response triggered by stress, anxiety, or even strong cravings. So, the moment you pause and take a deep, deliberate breath, your body starts dialing down the urgency. You shift from react to respond. Studies show that slow, deep breathing, specifically with an exhale longer than the inhale, signals safety to your brain. It literally tells your nervous system, we're okay now. That's why so many breathwork techniques emphasize the exhale. It's like whispering to your inner panic button, stand down, we've got this. You might find this surprising, ancient yogis called the breath prana, which means life force. They believed that controlling the breath was the key to controlling the mind. In fact, early yogic texts barely mentioned yoga poses. They focused on breath awareness as the heart of transformation. Looks like they were onto something thousands of years before wellness influencers made it trendy. Now imagine this, you're standing in line. You're late. You're annoyed. And the barista is chatting like it's a therapy session. The old habit kicks in, you pull out your phone, you open social media, you scroll. Automatic. But now you catch it. You notice the impulse. You pause. And instead, you breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, just one cycle. Suddenly, the moment shifts. It's still a line. You're still waiting. But you're with yourself instead of distracted from yourself. That is power. Let's make it even more practical. Try this simple habit-busting breath technique next time you're caught in an urge spiral. 4-6-8 breath. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 6 counts. Exhale slowly for 8 counts. It doesn't matter if you get the numbers perfectly right. The idea is to lengthen the exhale and bring deliberate rhythm to the breath. This slows your heart rate, soothes the nervous system, and gives you enough pause to step out of the habit loop, even for just a few seconds. Here's a quirky little fact, Navy SEALs use a similar method, called box breathing. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold, all for 4 counts, to stay calm in combat situations. So if it can work for soldiers under fire, it can probably help you resist doom scrolling during a tense Zoom meeting. And the beauty of the breath is that it doesn't ask you to be perfect. You don't need a meditation room. You don't even need silence. You can breathe mindfully while doing dishes, walking to your car, or, this one's underrated, sitting on the toilet. We've all got 5 minutes in there. Don't lie. There remains considerable disagreement about how much control we have over autonomic functions like the breath. Some scientists argue that, since breathing is automatic, it can't be that influential. Others point out that precisely because it bridges the conscious and unconscious, it's uniquely powerful. It's both voluntary and involuntary. It's a built-in anchor. A secret doorway between your thinking mind and your physical body. Let's say you have a habit of snapping at people when stressed. You know the feeling, tight chest, racing thoughts, heat rising. That's the cue. But instead of speaking, you pause. You breathe. One long, slow inhale. One even longer exhale. That gives your brain just enough time to cool the fire. And maybe, just maybe, you say something different this time. Will one breath fix everything? Nope. But that breath changes the direction of the moment. And change happens in moments. Here's something else fun. When you focus on your breath, even for 10 seconds, your brain has to pause other thoughts. It can't multitask well. So those spiraling worries or snack cravings, they lose momentum. Breath breaks their rhythm. You might still think the thought, but it doesn't carry the same heat. You can even make this a habit before the habit. Like a buffer. If you know you tend to make poor choices late at night, you can build a breathing pause right before your usual trigger time. For example, set a reminder at 9:45 p.m. to take 3 mindful breaths. That's it. No self-help speech. No guilt trip. Just breath. Space. Softness. And soon, your brain begins to associate that pause with safety. You start building a new habit, one of noticing, breathing, and gently rerouting. And yes, sometimes you'll forget. Sometimes you'll react before the breath arrives. That's okay. Because every time you do remember, even just once a day, you're feeding a new neural loop. A better one. Imagine a version of you 6 months from now who pauses before reacting. Who breathes through frustration. Who doesn't grab their phone every time discomfort knocks on the door. That version of you? It starts with breath. And speaking of the body, there's another powerful access point we haven't explored yet. Not breath this time, but sensation. The stuff you feel deep in your skin and bones. The subtle messages your body is sending before your mind even catches up. As your mind settles, your awareness sinks deeper, right into your body's quiet wisdom. So far, you've gotten cozy with your breath, and you're starting to catch those habits right at the edge of happening. But now, let's drop even deeper, into the quiet language of your body. Because here's the truth, your body always knows before your mind does. It feels the urge coming. It registers the tension. It hums, twinges, pulses, and sometimes even shouts, way before you've consciously registered anything as a craving or habit trigger. And that's where a practice called body scanning comes in. It's exactly what it sounds like, sweeping your attention gently through your body, piece by piece, from head to toe, or the other way around if you're a rebel. It helps you tune into the subtle physical sensations that underlie your behavior. Think of it as using your body like a GPS, before you drive into another autopilot loop. Mainstream psychology supports this, too. A 2010 study published in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine found that body-based mindfulness practices, like body scanning, help reduce emotional reactivity and improve interoceptive awareness. That's a fancy term for how well you can feel what's going on inside your body. People with higher interoceptive awareness are more likely to recognize stress before it builds into something impulsive. Translation: you catch the craving before it catches you. Let's make this real. You're at your desk. You're trying to focus. But there's this weird buzzing in your chest. Your shoulders are climbing toward your ears. Your foot's tapping like it's got a separate life. And your brain starts whispering, snack time. Or phone time. Or literally anything but this time. Instead of reacting, you pause. You bring your attention inward. You notice your tight jaw. Your clenched belly. You don't try to fix it. You just scan, like a gentle internal flashlight. The act of noticing dissolves a little of the tension. The craving loses momentum. You breathe. You stay. Research shows that when you feel into a craving with awareness, the sensation actually moves. It shifts. Maybe it rises. Then fades. It doesn't last forever. It's like a wave. You ride it instead of being dragged under. You might find this surprising. In some ancient Taoist meditation traditions, practitioners are taught to feel the qi, the energy, moving through their organs. Not metaphorically. Literally. They'd sit for hours tracking sensation across the body like a weather map. The takeaway? You don't have to become a full-time energy wizard, but there's serious wisdom in learning to feel the subtler aspects of your inner world. And body scanning gives you access to that subtlety. Try this, tonight, before bed. Lie down and bring your attention to the soles of your feet. Feel them. Not think about them, feel them. Then slowly move up to your ankles. Then your shins. Knees. Thighs. Pelvis. Belly. Chest. Hands. Arms. Shoulders. Neck. Face. Spend maybe 20 to 30 seconds on each area. If your mind wanders, gently come back. No judgment. Just awareness. What you'll start to notice is this: your body tells you things. Maybe your belly always tightens before you reach for comfort food. Maybe your jaw clenches before you snap at your partner. Maybe your hands fidget right before you scroll. These are the signals. Mindfulness helps you read them before they drive behavior. There remains considerable disagreement about how objective interoception can be. Some neuroscientists argue that physical sensations are colored by emotion and memory, while others believe in a more accurate body radar. But from the mindfulness perspective, that debate is beside the point. What matters is that you learn your body's language. Not perfectly. Just consistently. Here's a quirky little fact: in some trauma-sensitive yoga practices, teachers will ask students not just what they feel, but where they don't feel. Numbness, dissociation, blank spaces in body awareness, they count too. Because not feeling is still a signal. A message. And sometimes, that gentle scan brings you back to places in your body you've ignored for years. Now picture this. You're feeling a sudden pull to binge watch a show you don't even like. Something just feels off. But instead of sinking into the habit, you pause. You sit. You close your eyes. You scan your body. You feel the restlessness behind your ribs. A heat in your temples. Maybe even a lump in your throat. You breathe into it. You say, "Hello, sensation." You let it be there. And maybe that urge doesn't need to be answered anymore. Maybe it just wanted to be felt. That's the secret most habits are hiding. They're often band-aids over sensation. You feel discomfort, and instead of facing it, you cover it with sugar or screen time or sarcasm. But when you face it directly, when you feel it fully, it starts to soften. The habit loses its reason for being. And here's something really powerful: the more you scan your body regularly, the faster you recognize your danger zones. You'll catch stress before it becomes snacking. You'll notice tightness before you lash out. And you'll begin to interrupt the loop, not from willpower, but from wisdom. Let's try a short microscan now, right here. Close your eyes if you can. Bring attention to your feet. Notice any sensation. Warmth, tingling, numbness, whatever's there. Move to your legs. Feel their weight. Your belly, tight or soft. Your chest, rising, falling. Your hands, are they clenched or loose? Your jaw, relaxed or tight? Your forehead, scrunched or smooth? Now take one deep breath, all the way down into your belly, and exhale slowly. Let your attention fill your whole body. That's it. You just reconnected. You just caught your body mid-message. And the more you do this, the more you'll start to recognize those subtle messages before the habit autopilot kicks in. Which brings us to the next big technique, a juicy one. A method built entirely on sensation awareness. A way to meet cravings head-on, surf them like waves, and come out the other side without wiping out. Yes, we're talking about urge surfing. Grab your board, we're paddling out. Alright, time to grab your imaginary wetsuit and dive in. You've gotten familiar with your breath. You've scanned your body like a calm detective. And now you're going to learn how to surf your urges. Yes, surf them. No, not metaphorically. Okay, yes, metaphorically, but the method is surprisingly literal in practice. Urge surfing is one of the most effective mindfulness-based strategies for handling cravings, impulses, and those oh-so-familiar habit triggers that sneak up out of nowhere and demand, do the thing. But instead of diving into the thing, you ride it. Here's the idea: cravings and urges aren't static. They rise, they peak, and then, they fade. If you can stay with them like a surfer riding a wave, you don't need to be thrown off your board. You just ride it out until the wave loses power. And science backs this up. A mainstream study in addictive behaviors found that participants who practiced mindfulness-based urge surfing were significantly less likely to relapse into smoking or substance use. Why? Because they learned that the urge was temporary. Not an emergency. Not a command. Just a feeling. Now picture this: you get a sudden, intense craving for a soda. Your mouth waters. Your thoughts start chattering, it's just one. You've been good all day. You deserve it. But instead of reacting, you pause. You notice. You breathe. And then you surf. You drop into your body and track the craving like a wave. You feel where it lands, maybe in your chest, or your throat, or behind your eyes. You don't fight it. You don't feed it. You just feel it. The tension, the restlessness, the wanting. You stay with it like a curious observer. And then, it passes. Maybe not instantly, maybe not easily, but it does. Here's something interesting: the average craving lasts about 20 minutes, according to addiction research. That's it. But when you react immediately, you reset the clock. Every sip, bite, scroll restarts the loop. When you surf the urge, though, you let the clock run out. One craving survived equals one loop broken. You might find this surprising. This technique was first adapted for addiction recovery in mindfulness-based relapse prevention programs. The term urge surfing was coined by psychologist Dr. Alan Marlatt, who believed that cravings were like waves. You can't stop them, but you can stay upright until they pass. Let's walk through it in real time. You feel the urge coming. That twitchy, itchy feeling that says, I need to do the thing. Right now. Maybe it's opening Instagram. Maybe it's biting your nails. Maybe it's saying something petty just because you're annoyed. Instead of acting, you pause. You breathe. You tell yourself gently, I'm going to surf this. You close your eyes if you can. You scan your body. You name what you're feeling. Tension in the shoulders. Buzzing in the fingers. Heat in the chest. Then you breathe into it. You stay curious. Not rigid. Not trying to force it away. Just noticing. And here comes the wave. It might rise higher. You might feel like you're about to cave. But stay with it. Feel the peak. Watch what happens next. And then, it begins to fall. Just like a wave. That's the magic. You didn't drown. You didn't obey the urge. You just rode it. There remains considerable disagreement about whether urge surfing works as well for deeply ingrained behaviors, like emotional eating or compulsive checking, as it does for acute cravings like nicotine. Some argue those deeper patterns need more complex cognitive strategies. But many mindfulness practitioners say that even the strongest emotional habits can be softened, wave by wave, through consistent practice. Here's a quirky detail: some therapists actually give clients a surfboard-shaped urge log, no joke, where they track the size, intensity, and duration of their urges each day. Turns out, visualizing the craving as something to be ridden rather than resisted helps people create distance from it. And that's the point. Distance. The urge is no longer you. It's something happening within you. Like a rainstorm. You don't blame yourself for rain. You grab a jacket, breathe through it, and wait it out. So how can you build your own urge surfing habit? Start small. Pick one habit loop where the craving tends to show up strong: snacking at night, checking your phone in the morning, or pouring that unnecessary third cup of coffee. Then wait. Breathe. Ride the wave. You'll fail sometimes. That's fine. Every surfer wipes out. The goal isn't perfection, it's practice. And even one wave surfed successfully sends a new message to your brain: we're not at the mercy of this anymore. Want a tip to make surfing easier? Name the urge out loud. Or whisper it. Or write it down. This is the "I need sugar" urge. This is the "I want to avoid feelings" urge. Naming separates you from it. You're not drowning anymore, you're watching the weather roll through. Now here's something else: the more you surf, the shorter the waves become. Your brain starts to learn, hey, this craving doesn't need a reward. It's just a signal. And once the signal isn't reinforced, the habit starts to shrink. So next time you're about to press play next episode for the 4th time, or buy something you don't need, or refresh that inbox again, try this. Pause. Notice the sensation. Name it. Breathe. Write it. Then repeat that as many times as you need. You're not a slave to the urge. You're a surfer. Wobbly? Sure. But standing. And once you've surfed a few waves, something interesting starts to happen. The habit doesn't just weaken, you actually start feeling more in control of your life. More awake. More present. But what if you're ready to go one step further? What if you're not just trying to resist the bad habit, but you want to replace it? Coming up next, you'll learn how mindfulness doesn't just help you say no, it helps you say yes to something better. Something that actually feels good. You've now got a toolbox filling up, noticing without judgment, scanning your body, surfing those sneaky cravings. You're no longer reacting on autopilot, you're watching, breathing, choosing. But there comes a point when resisting the old isn't enough. You're ready to plant something new. Something that actually nourishes you. And this, dear listener, is where mindfulness meets strategy. Not only are you stepping out of the bad habit loop, you're starting to replace it. Intentionally. Gently. Sustainably. Because let's face it, nature abhors a vacuum. If you yank a behavior out of your routine, especially one that offered some kind of relief, and don't put something in its place, your brain's going to go hunting. Probably back to the original habit. That's why we replace, not just remove. Mainstream psychology has a name for this: behavioral substitution. It's a core concept in cognitive behavioral therapy. When you feel the cue and the craving, you don't just sit there and suffer. You redirect the energy toward a different, healthier behavior. Mindfulness helps you catch the moment. Strategy helps you shift the action. Let's break that down with an example. Say your go-to stress habit is junk food. Every time you feel overwhelmed, you raid the fridge like you're preparing for a zombie apocalypse. But now, you're aware. You catch the urge. You pause. You surf. But instead of leaving a giant, uncomfortable void, you insert something else, like stretching. Or taking a walk. Or even sipping tea while focusing on the warmth in your hands. You're still addressing the need, comfort, grounding, distraction, but doing it differently. And the brain learns, hey, this new thing works too. Do that enough, and the old behavior fades while the new one grows strong roots. Here's an interesting one. Researchers at Duke University found that the more a replacement habit offers a similar reward to the original one, the more likely it is to stick. Your brain loves patterns. If it gets the same dopamine sparkle from journaling, movement, or connection that it used to get from cookies or Instagram, it's more willing to switch lanes. One of the most effective substitution strategies for quitting smoking? Chewing cinnamon sticks. Not because they fix the addiction, but because they give the mouth and hands something to do. It's not always about deep transformation. Sometimes it's about giving your sensory system a better decoy. But here's where mindfulness adds a twist. You don't just substitute blindly. You notice what your body and mind are asking for, then you choose the response. Say you're craving a scroll session. You pause and realize, oh, I'm just lonely. Mindfulness helps you see that clearly. Then, instead of diving into a sea of curated highlight reels, you call a friend. Or listen to a podcast. Or sit outside and feel the breeze. You're still feeding the emotional need, but in a way that actually works. A long-standing controversy surrounds whether replacing a habit is just another form of avoidance. Some critics argue that substitution ignores the root emotion, fear, sadness, restlessness, and distracts from it. But the mindfulness-based counterpoint is this: when the replacement is conscious and compassionate, it's not avoidance. It's transformation. You're not running from discomfort, you're meeting it with care. And here's a quirky little fact. In one mindfulness training study for binge eating, participants were told to keep grapes nearby. When a craving struck, they were asked to pick up a grape, examine it, smell it, and eat it mindfully over 30 seconds. The result? A significant drop in binge episodes. Why? Because it interrupted the loop with presence and offered a symbolic gesture of self-kindness. So let's get practical. Next time you notice a bad habit about to trigger, ask yourself 3 simple questions. What am I feeling right now, emotionally and physically? What do I need, not want, but need? What's one small thing I can do instead that respects that need? Let's say you're tired, but wired. You want to scroll. But what you really need is rest. So instead of TikTok, you put on a soothing playlist and lie down with your eyes closed for 5 minutes. It's not the same rush, but it's restorative. And your nervous system starts to learn that this kind of comfort feels better, longer. That's the difference: habits that help you survive versus habits that help you heal. The first give short-term relief. The second give long-term ease. Want to make it even easier on yourself? Stack the new habit with a cue. This is called habit pairing. Say, every time you brush your teeth, cue, you take 3 deep breaths, replacement. Or after you close your laptop, cue, you stretch for 2 minutes, replacement. The more seamless the handoff, the faster it sticks. Here's another tip: make the new habit visible and convenient. If your impulse is to scroll, put a journal by your couch instead of your phone. If it's snacking, keep a water bottle in arm's reach. Your environment can nudge you toward the new loop, just like it once pushed you into the old one. And if the new behavior doesn't fully scratch the itch, that's okay. You're retraining your brain, not tricking it. Some waves still knock you down. But every time you pause, notice, and choose differently, even just a little, you're rewiring. Redirecting. Reclaiming. Picture yourself a month from now. You've swapped one tiny behavior. You breathe instead of snapping. You journal instead of binging. You stretch instead of scrolling. Each action is small. But the effect? Massive. Your days feel different. Your body feels steadier. Your mind feels more like a home than a war zone. And when that shift takes root, mindfulness doesn't feel like a technique anymore. It starts to feel like who you are. Which brings us to a place many people fear: formal mindfulness meditation. But don't worry, we're not talking about sitting in silence for hours while resisting the urge to rearrange your spice rack. Next, we'll explore what meditation actually looks like when you're using it to shift habits, and how to start without the pressure. Okay, deep breath. We're about to say the M word. Meditation. There it is. Maybe it gives you a warm glow, or maybe your brain just flashed images of someone sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop with the patience of a monk and the posture of a Greek statue. Maybe you've tried it before and thought, this is boring, and my nose itches. But here's the truth: meditation isn't about being serene or perfectly still. It's not about stopping thoughts or reaching enlightenment in the checkout line at Trader Joe's. And it's definitely not about sitting for 45 minutes while questioning every decision you've ever made. At its most practical, meditation is just practice for your brain, a gym where you lift the mental weights of awareness, redirection, and non-judgment. It's habit training in real time. Every time you sit down, focus on your breath or body, get distracted, and return, you're rehearsing the exact same move that helps you break bad habits: catch, pause, choose. That move? It's a game changer. Mainstream psychological research, especially from John Kabat-Zinn's mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, programs, has shown that just 10 minutes of daily meditation can significantly increase activity in brain regions responsible for executive control, meaning you're more likely to catch your habits before they kick in. It also improves emotion regulation and impulse control, two skills that, let's be honest, are severely underrated when you're trying not to eat your feelings. Consistent meditation has been shown to reduce activity in the default mode network, or DMN. That's the part of your brain responsible for mind-wandering, self-referential thinking, and that spiral where you analyze every text message you've ever sent since 2009. Less DMN activity equals less compulsive reactivity. Hello, clarity. Even 3 minutes of meditation can create noticeable shifts in brainwave activity. One study found that novice meditators experienced a measurable drop in stress-related brain activity after just a few minutes of focused breathing. So forget the pressure to meditate like a monk. Just start where you are, even if it's in your car before you head into work, or on your lunch break, or, yes, sitting on the toilet. Again, no judgment. Let's bust a few myths while we're here. Myth number 1, I can't meditate because my mind won't stop thinking. Guess what? That's the point. Meditation isn't about having no thoughts. It's about noticing them and gently returning your focus. Every time you come back to the breath, or the body, or a sound, you're doing reps, mental push-ups. You're not bad at meditation. You're just doing it honestly. Myth number 2, I don't have time. But you have time to scroll. To worry. To reread that passive-aggressive email for the 3rd time. Start with 60 seconds. Yes, just 1 minute. Set a timer. Breathe in. Breathe out. Notice your body. Done. The consistency matters more than the duration. Myth number 3, meditation is supposed to feel relaxing. It can be. But sometimes, it's frustrating. It's boring. It's like watching 32 open tabs in your brain slowly reload themselves. That's okay. The magic isn't in the calm, it's in the awareness. There remains considerable disagreement about the best meditation styles for habit change. Some experts recommend focused attention meditation, where you stay with the breath or a mantra. Others suggest open monitoring, where you observe thoughts and sensations without clinging to any of them. Still others swear by loving-kindness meditation, sending well wishes to yourself and others, to soften self-judgment. The mindfulness community itself lovingly debates all this over herbal tea and probably some quinoa. So which one should you do? Whichever one you'll actually stick with. Here's a beginner-friendly practice you can try tonight. No incense required. 5-minute habit awareness sit. Find a quiet spot. Sit upright but relaxed. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Close your eyes, or soften your gaze. Focus on your breath. Feel it moving in and out. When a thought, urge, or craving arises, mentally note it, thinking, wanting, planning. Then gently return to the breath. Notice any habitual urges. If the itch to get up or check your phone hits, don't judge it. Just label it. Watch it. Let it pass. When the timer rings, take a deep breath, open your eyes, and notice how you feel. No fireworks. No wow moment. Just presence. That's it. And here's a quirky detail. In some Zen monasteries, beginners are told, just sit and be aware of the desire to stand. That's their first meditation instruction. They're literally practicing not scratching the itch. It's urge surfing, meditation style. Now let's address the elephant in the brain. Sometimes meditation feels useless when you're in the middle of a real-life moment. You're not going to drop into lotus pose while arguing with your partner or standing at the fridge. But that's why we practice on the cushion or the chair or the yoga mat, so that when those moments come, the skill is already built. You've rehearsed catching the impulse and pausing. You've trained your attention to come back. You've learned to stay, even when it's uncomfortable. That's the training ground. That's the magic. And it adds up. You meditate for 5 minutes today. Then again tomorrow. Then again the day after. Some days you'll forget. Some days you'll resent it. Some days you'll love it. Doesn't matter. Keep sitting. Keep showing up. Keep rewiring. Before long, you start to notice a shift. You catch your habits faster. You respond more kindly. You breathe instead of biting. You step back before diving in. It's not perfect. But it's progress. So if you've been waiting for the sign to give meditation another shot, this is it. No pressure. No purity test. Just your breath. Your body. Your mind. And once you're meditating, just a little, you'll start seeing how everything else changes too. How you eat, how you react, how you sleep. Oh right. Sleep. Stress. The secret duo behind so many stubborn habits. Up next, we're talking sabotage cycles, and how mindfulness helps you stop the midnight spiral before it even starts. Let's be honest, some of your worst habits probably don't happen when you're feeling energized, well-rested, and stress-free with a perfect 7-point to-do list humming along. No. They crawl out when you're exhausted, tense, frazzled, or just so emotionally fried that you do anything to feel better fast. Enter the twin troublemakers, sleep deprivation and stress. Together, they form a sneaky little sabotage cycle that quietly fuels the very habits you're trying to change. They drain your willpower, fog your thinking, shorten your fuse, and amplify cravings until suddenly that 11 p.m. snack raid feels like survival, not indulgence. But mindfulness? Mindfulness helps you break the cycle before it breaks you. Let's start with sleep. Sleep deprivation messes with your brain in all the wrong ways. A well-known study out of UC Berkeley showed that even just one night of poor sleep reduces activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and self-control, and boosts reactivity in the amygdala, your brain's emotional fire alarm. Translation: when you're tired, you're impulsive, irritable, and far more likely to make reactive decisions. Like binge-watching a full season of a show you don't even like. Or stress-eating half a loaf of sourdough in your pajamas. And here's something interesting: sleep loss doesn't just make you grumpy, it actually increases your body's craving for sugary, high-fat foods. Why? Because your body's trying to stay awake and energized, and it thinks quick carbs are the solution. The result? You're not weak, you're just running a body that thinks it's under siege. You might find this surprising. Studies show that just 6 hours of sleep per night for a week can impair your cognitive function as much as if you'd stayed awake for 24 hours straight. And yet, most people don't even realize how sleep-deprived they are, because that fog becomes their new normal. This is where mindfulness comes in, not just to help you sleep better, but to help you catch the spin-out before it starts. Mindfulness before bed, especially breathwork, body scanning, or a short meditation, can lower your cortisol levels and ease the nervous system into rest mode. You stop spinning. Your thoughts soften. Your body releases the tension it's been holding since that awkward work meeting or whatever social weirdness is still echoing in your brain. There remains considerable disagreement about how much sleep loss versus stress is the bigger trigger for bad habits. Some experts argue that poor sleep is the root, since it disrupts so many hormonal systems. Others say stress is the bigger culprit, because it hijacks your attention and coping mechanisms. But really, they're like codependent roommates. One throws the party, the other forgets to clean up, and your brain is the house that pays for it. Now let's zoom in on stress. That quiet, or not so quiet, undercurrent behind so many reactive habits. Stress doesn't just live in your head. It shows up in your muscles, your breath, your posture, your digestion. And if you don't deal with it directly, it hijacks your habits. That quick scroll when you're anxious? Stress. That extra glass of wine on a tense evening? Stress. That sarcastic dig you didn't really mean? Yep, stress again. But when you bring mindfulness to stress, something beautiful happens. You start to recognize the symptoms before they explode into habits. Let's walk through a real example. You're rushing through your day. You've skipped lunch, your phone won't stop pinging, and someone just cut you off in traffic. You're flooded with tension. Before, this might have led to a reaction, impulse shopping, snapping at your partner, or disappearing into YouTube for 3 hours. But now? You pause. You scan your body. You feel the tightness in your shoulders. The clenched jaw. You name it, this is stress. You breathe. You let yourself feel it. And suddenly, you're in the loop, not trapped by it. Here's a quirky little fact. In some mindfulness programs for high-stress occupations, think ER nurses and firefighters, participants are taught a 3-breath practice. Stop what you're doing, take 1 breath to notice the body, 1 to feel the emotion, and 1 to choose your next move. It takes less than 15 seconds, and it's saved more than a few people from falling into knee-jerk habits they'd regret later. Now let's talk strategy. When it comes to sleep and stress, mindfulness works best when it's built into your daily rhythm, not just reserved for emergencies. That means short meditations before bed. Even 5 minutes of breath awareness can ease you into deeper rest. Mini body scans throughout the day. Great for catching stress before it snowballs. Mindful transitions. Take 60 seconds to breathe when you get home before you touch your phone, fridge, or family drama. Label the emotion. When you feel triggered, pause and name it. This is overwhelm. This is restlessness. That alone starts to bring your nervous system back down. And don't forget environmental cues. Stress plus fatigue love to run the show when you're surrounded by easy access temptations. So if your habit is checking your phone first thing in the morning, try charging it across the room. If stress eating is your go-to, keep a full glass of water visible on your kitchen counter to prompt a pause. The goal isn't to avoid stress or force yourself to sleep 9 hours every night like some wellness unicorn. The goal is to notice sooner and respond more gently. To create a softer space between trigger and habit. Because when you're rested and grounded, your habits shift almost automatically. You don't crave distraction as much. You don't reach for old comforts as often. You still get triggered, but you come back faster. With less drama. Imagine this, at the end of a long day. You've had moments of tension. You've felt the pull of old habits. But you've also paused. Breathed. Noticed. And now, instead of falling into the stress scroll sugar spiral, you lay down. You breathe into your belly. You feel the day release. That's not a miracle. That's just mindfulness at work. And while that might feel like a finish line, you and I both know that some days it won't go so smoothly. You'll resist mindfulness. You'll get bored. You'll want to quit. That's okay. Because in our next section, we'll talk about what happens when mindfulness itself becomes hard, and how to keep going when your brain fights back. So, you've tried the breath. You've scanned your body. You've surfed the urge. You've even swapped the late-night snack for a mindful cup of tea. And then, out of nowhere, it happens. Your brain says, "This is dumb. This isn't working. Let's go back to doom scrolling and nachos." Welcome to the part nobody likes to talk about, when mindfulness itself gets messy. Boring. Frustrating. Or just plain annoying. Let's be honest, sticking with mindfulness isn't all incense and inner peace. Some days, it feels like trying to herd fog with a spoon. Other days, you'd rather do literally anything else. Vacuum your ceiling. Reorganize your email folders. Deep clean your air fryer. And yet, this is the moment that matters most. Not the calm ones. Not the perfect ones. But the ones where your mind rebels and you stay anyway. Because here's the reality check: the resistance is the practice. And knowing how to navigate it? That's what separates "I tried mindfulness once" from "this actually changed my life." Let's dig into what actually causes mindfulness resistance. Why your brain puts up a fight when all you're trying to do is sit down, breathe, and feel less like a tornado. One big culprit? Distraction overload. We live in a culture that trains your attention to flicker. Click. Refresh. Chase novelty. Mindfulness, by contrast, is about staying with one thing for longer than your nervous system thinks it can tolerate. So when you try to meditate or pause mid-habit, your brain panics. It screams, "Do something. Anything." This silence is unbearable. But that reaction isn't a failure. It's a withdrawal symptom from constant stimulation. And it will pass. In one study, people were given the option to sit quietly for 15 minutes or receive a mild electric shock. A majority of participants chose the shock. That's how uncomfortable stillness is for the average brain. Your restlessness isn't personal, it's cultural. Even seasoned mindfulness practitioners get bored. There's a Tibetan word, nyam, which refers to the states of dullness, fatigue, irritation, or apathy that arise during meditation. Entire teachings are devoted to it. The takeaway? This is normal. Resistance means you're doing the work. Another common hurdle? Self-doubt. You might wonder, am I doing this right? Why don't I feel anything? Shouldn't I be more zen by now? There remains considerable disagreement among mindfulness teachers about whether formal technique matters as much as consistency. Some emphasize structure, set times, set postures. Others advocate for flexibility and integration. But all agree on one thing: coming back is the key. So here's the rule: if you're aware that you wandered off, you're winning. You sit. Your mind runs away. You notice. You come back. That's it. That's the rep, that's the change. But what if your mind really resists? Like, you sit down and immediately remember 7 errands, a weird dream from 2006, and suddenly decide you need to color code your spice rack. This is where gentleness becomes your superpower. Meet the resistance like you'd meet a friend who's panicking. You don't scream at them. You sit beside them. You say, "It's okay. I'm not going anywhere." Because when you fight resistance with more resistance, why can't I focus? What's wrong with me? You reinforce the loop. But when you acknowledge it, restlessness is here, you create space. Here's a quirky little tip from old school Zen tradition: when you're too agitated to meditate, try walking meditation. Yep, just walking. Slowly. Mindfully. Feel your feet touch the ground. Feel your arms swinging. No phone. No podcast. Just step. 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 It gives your body something to do while your mind slowly unwinds. And if even that's too much, start smaller. One breath. Right now. In. Out. You just practiced mindfulness. Congratulations. Another major roadblock? Emotional discomfort. Sometimes, mindfulness gets hard because it works. You start noticing things you've been avoiding: loneliness, anxiety, grief, shame. It's like lifting a rug and realizing there's been a mess under there for years. Mindfulness doesn't cause these feelings, it just shows you what was already there. But here's the promise: when you stay with those feelings, they start to soften. Like snow melting under a quiet sun. Slowly. Gently. You don't need to fix them. You just need to stay. Breathe. Name. Let them move through you. Try this. When something painful comes up in mindfulness practice, an uncomfortable memory, an itch of regret, a wave of sadness, pause. Put a hand on your heart. Whisper, "This is hard, and I'm staying." That simple act of self-kindness rewires your habit of running away from yourself. Let's circle back to habits. Say you've been doing well with your new pattern, pausing before snacking, journaling instead of scrolling, and then, suddenly, you crash. You binge. You rage text. You inhale 3 donuts and don't even taste them. Your brain says, "Well, that's it. You failed." But here's the mindfulness move: begin again. Always. Begin again. That phrase is the heartbeat of every meditation tradition. Begin again. Every breath. Every moment. Every slip up. You don't fall off the path, you return to it. Here's a quirky little story. In traditional Japanese pottery, there's an art called kintsugi, the practice of repairing broken ceramics with gold. Instead of hiding the cracks, they highlight them. The break becomes part of the beauty. That's your practice. You don't hide your failures. You highlight your return. So let's make this practical. Mindfulness rescue plan for when it gets messy. When distracted, smile and say, "Coming back." When bored, try a new focus, body, sound, or walking. When doubting, remind yourself, noticing is the practice. When emotional, place a hand on your body. Name the feeling. Stay gentle. When you mess up, begin again. Without drama. Without shame. Because this isn't about doing mindfulness right. It's about showing up. It's about noticing what's here. Right now. And now. And now again. And soon, mindfulness stops being something you do. It becomes something you live. Not once a day on a cushion, but throughout your entire life, even in the smallest moments. So next, we explore how mindfulness spills into those in-between spaces. The dishwashing. The walking. The waiting. The scrolling. Because habit change doesn't just happen in one moment of awareness, it happens in every moment you remember to wake up. You've surfed urges, faced resistance, and begun again more times than you can count. You've met yourself in the mess, taken mindful breaths, and watched your habits from a distance instead of being swept away by them. But here's where the real magic starts, when mindfulness moves beyond your practice time and gently weaves itself into the texture of your everyday life. Not just a moment, but a mindful life. Because let's be honest, most of your habits don't wait for your designated meditation window. They show up when you're brushing your teeth, checking your email, waiting in line, or getting sucked into a TikTok loop while your coffee goes cold. That's why mindfulness can't just be something you visit. It has to be something you carry. And you can. You already are. Mainstream psychology calls this informal mindfulness, the art of bringing awareness into ordinary daily activities. It's not a technique so much as a way of being. A practice that asks, can I be here, fully, even now? Even when I'm tired. Even when I'm washing dishes. Even when nothing profound is happening. Here's something interesting. A 2014 study found that practicing informal mindfulness during mundane tasks, like washing dishes, actually increased feelings of calm and reduced nervous tension. But here's the key: participants had to focus fully on the activity, the smell of the soap, the warmth of the water, the smoothness of the dish. When they did, stress dropped. Presence rose. Monks in many traditions don't consider meditation more sacred than sweeping the floor or chopping vegetables. In fact, those everyday acts are the meditation. When done with full attention, they become moments of awakening. So, how does this help with bad habits? Because those ordinary in-between moments are often where your automatic behaviors live. Let's take your morning routine. You wake up. What's the first thing your hand reaches for? Your phone. The snooze button. The snack drawer. Mindful living means catching those moments. Noticing them. Maybe even gently replacing them. Not with a big dramatic gesture, but with a tiny breath, a pause, a different decision. Let's walk through a few simple ways mindfulness slips into your day-to-day. 1. Brushing your teeth. Sounds mundane, right? But brushing your teeth is often the first and last thing you do each day, and one of the most mindless. What if you turned it into a 2-minute mindfulness practice? Feel the bristles. Smell the toothpaste. Listen to the sound. Sense your feet on the ground. You're building presence. And when you're present at the beginning and end of your day, you create a bookend for intentional living. 2. Eating. No more autopilot lunches while replying to 6 emails and watching a YouTube review of a phone you don't even want. Eat slowly. Chew. Taste. Ask yourself, am I actually hungry? Or just bored, sad, or procrastinating? A long-standing controversy surrounds how much informal mindfulness alone can impact deep-seated habits like emotional eating. Some experts argue formal practice is essential. Others believe that daily life is the perfect training ground. The truth? They're both right. The more often you practice any form of mindfulness, the more likely you are to recognize the habit before it bites back. 3. Walking. You walk dozens of times a day, across the room, to your car, around your house. Every step is an opportunity to come back to your body. Feel your feet touching the ground. Listen to the ambient sounds. Notice the air against your skin. That's mindfulness. Not mystical. Just physical. 4. Waiting. Instead of doom scrolling while waiting in line, try this. Take 3 conscious breaths. Look around without judgment. Notice the impulse to check something. Stay still instead. Let the waiting become rest. Here's a quirky detail. In early Zen monasteries, monks were taught to pause at doorways and bow, not for ritual's sake, but as a reminder to arrive fully in the next space. What if you paused at your front door, your car, or the fridge? 1 breath. 1 reset. 1 moment of mindfulness. 5. Scrolling. Let's not pretend you're going to give up social media completely. That's not the goal. But what if you checked in before checking out? Before you open an app, ask yourself, why am I here? What do I need right now? That one question turns a habit into a choice. You can even set visual cues for informal mindfulness, like a post-it on your laptop that says, breathe, or a lock screen reminder that says, pause first. These little nudges reintroduce choice where there used to be only reflex. And here's something else, informal mindfulness builds momentum. The more often you return to presence in daily tasks, the more likely you are to notice the real habit loops when they start spinning. You're not shocked by the urge, you're expecting it. You've trained for this. So now, when you feel the familiar pull, 1 more snack, 1 more scroll, 1 more sarcastic comment, you have a new reflex. A gentle pause. A breath. A return. You still can do the thing, sure, but now you're choosing, not reacting. And this is where your new habits start to embed themselves. Quietly. Casually. No big declarations. Just subtle shifts in everyday moments. You breathe at the red light. You feel the water while washing your hands. You listen, really listen, when someone's talking. You taste your coffee instead of gulping it. You feel the shape of your day while you're living it. This is how mindfulness becomes less of a thing you do, and more of a way you are. Not perfectly. Not always. But more and more. And when you forget, which you will, you just begin again. Not because you failed, but because this is the practice. A mindful life is made of thousands of returns. So now, take a moment. Look around. Wherever you are right now, the couch, the kitchen, the train, let yourself arrive. You've done so much unlearning already. You've faced habits that once ruled your days. You've sat with discomfort. You've built new routines. And now you're living with more awareness, even in the simplest things. But what about those moments when it all falls apart again? When you relapse, react, or completely forget everything you've learned? That's when the deepest layer of the work begins, learning the art of letting go, and beginning again. Let's step gently into that final space. Here we are. You've made it through the urges, the cravings, the inner battles, the sleepy resistance, the little wins, and the not-so-little setbacks. You've tasted what it's like to live more consciously, to choose instead of react. But now comes the final and, in many ways, most powerful practice of all. Letting go. And beginning again. Because let's face it, no matter how mindful you become, you're still going to mess up sometimes. You'll still fall into old habits. You'll still eat the thing you swore you wouldn't. Scroll longer than you meant to. Snap when you meant to breathe. But that doesn't mean you failed. That doesn't mean you're broken. That just means you're human. And the work now is learning how to fall gently, with kindness, and get back up without turning it into a drama. That's what mindfulness offers you, most of all, grace in the moment after. There's a beautiful concept in Buddhist meditation called beginner's mind. It's the idea that every breath, every moment, every mistake is a chance to return as if for the first time. No baggage. No ego. Just a willingness to start fresh. And isn't that what we're all really craving? Not perfection. Not total self-control. Just the chance to try again without shame. Mainstream psychology backs this up too. Research in self-compassion, particularly from Dr. Kristin Neff's work, shows that people who treat themselves kindly after a setback are more likely to change long-term habits, not less. Guilt and self-criticism don't create change. They create paralysis. But compassion? That's momentum. That's fuel. Studies show that when you reflect on a mistake with self-forgiveness, your brain releases oxytocin, the same chemical that promotes bonding and trust. So when you forgive yourself, you're literally rebuilding trust with yourself. That's what helps you keep going. You might find this surprising. The act of beginning again is harder for high achievers. The ones who are used to pushing, forcing, and getting results. But mindfulness isn't results-based. It's relationship-based. You're not fixing yourself. You're befriending yourself. And there remains considerable disagreement about how much structure versus softness is needed for true change. Some say discipline is key. Others say surrender. But mindfulness teaches you to hold both, steady intention and gentle flexibility. You set the path, and forgive the stumbles. So what does it actually look like to begin again? Let's say you're doing well. You've been consistent with breath work. You've surfed a few urges. You're eating more mindfully. Then, bam. Stress hits. Sleep slips. You fall headfirst into a week of Netflix, cookies, and self-doubt. Old habits flood back like they never left. Your inner critic wakes up fast. You're a fraud. This was a phase. You'll never change. But here's the mindfulness move. You pause. You breathe. You say, okay. I see what's happened. That's all. You don't spiral. You witness. You bring a hand to your heart. You name the moment. This is disappointment. This is fatigue. You feel it. You stay. Then, without drama, you begin again. Maybe you start with one mindful meal. Or one breath before checking your phone. Or one slow walk around the block, feeling your feet. That's the return. That's the magic. Here's a quirky metaphor to tuck in your pocket. In some mindfulness circles, they compare your practice to a snow globe. Life shakes you up. Everything gets cloudy. But when you sit still, just for a little, the flakes settle. The clarity returns. You don't have to fix anything. Just stop shaking. Letting go isn't about giving up. It's about releasing the grip. The pressure to be perfect. The story that says, I've ruined everything. You haven't. You've just wandered off. And now, you're walking home. You can even ritualize your begin again moments. Light a candle. Stretch for 1 minute. Say a phrase, I am here. I am trying. That's enough. Make it yours. Because when you treat every setback as a doorway, not a dead end, your relationship with change transforms. You stop chasing goals, and start tending to your growth. Gently. Patiently. Like watering a garden, not hammering a wall. And over time, you'll realize that the you who shows up after a setback is even wiser than the one who was doing everything right. That version of you? They've felt the fall. And they chose to return anyway. That's resilience. That's mindfulness. And now, as you let these ideas settle into your bones, we gently drift into stillness. Into the soft, closing space where nothing needs to happen, and everything is allowed to unfold. Let's slow everything down now. Let the ideas blur at the edges, like a painting fading into dusk. Let your breath lengthen. Let your shoulders soften. Let your mind unrip, just a little more with each exhale. You've traveled far, not in miles, but in awareness. Through cravings, urges, loops, and quiet wins. You've learned to listen more closely. To feel more fully. To show up for yourself with a little more care, even when things get messy. And right now, in this still moment, nothing needs to change. Nothing needs to be fixed. You are not behind. You are not late. You're here. Breathing. Becoming. Let yourself remember, habit change isn't a test. It's a conversation with yourself. A remembering. A returning. You'll forget. You'll fall. You'll pause. You'll begin again. 1,000 tiny times. That's how change happens. Not in grand gestures, but in quiet choices. So as you settle into rest tonight, let your breath rock you gently. Let your thoughts drift like clouds. Let your body be held by the ground beneath you. You've done enough for today. You're doing beautifully, even when it doesn't feel that way. Before you settle in, feel free to like the video if it brought you a little peace, and if you'd like to join us again, we'd love to have you back. Subscribe when you're ready. No pressure, just rest. Share something if you feel like it. Let's slowly drift into tonight's quiet moments together.